The Council's voice was final cold, like a gun barrel against Earth's skull. Exiled. Humanity's seat at the galactic table stripped, its systems flagged as hostile space, its ships blacklisted from every trade route and starport between here and the Perseus Veil. The vote took less than 2 minutes. The war that followed never ended. Earth didn't beg, didn't crawl, didn't even answer the transmission. They sealed the gates, darkened the satellites, and every station orbiting Sol went silent. For a year, nothing moved. Not a ship, not a signal, not a pulse. The Council called it surrender. They had no idea. Earth wasn't licking wounds. They were building something in the dark. Fleets without flags. Ships with hulls that drank radar and spat back lies. They built engines that didn't hum. They howled. And the crews inside? They weren't soldiers. They were ghosts wearing human skin, men and women who'd buried their homes under Council bombardments and carved names into ammunition. The first strike came in the Mathari Drift. Council patrols caught a fragment of a human distress signal and moved in for capture. What they found was a hull floating in the void, its surface engraved with Earth's final message, Exiled, ESN, int MEANDE, a D. The trap closed. Human warships decloaked inside their formation. Pulse cannons gutted the lead cruiser in the first salvo, and the survivors were spaced before they could scream. Word spread fast. Earth had returned, but not the Earth they remembered. This wasn't the tired species begging for scraps of territory. This was something sharpened in exile, a species that stopped caring who they impressed and started caring who they could burn down. On the Council homeworld of T Vera Prime, envoys tried to frame it as isolated piracy. Then the Cradle War began. Earth fleets hit 16 Council colonies at once, slipspace ruptures, tearing open orbitals, deploying boarding teams, wearing sealed armor, and no insignias. They moved without comms, without mercy. Civilian or combatant, every Council loyalist left breathing was thrown out the nearest airlock. The rest they took. Weapons, data cores, fuel, even the walls if they could cut them out. They were building something bigger. Council analysts scraped old human comms to figure out what they were after, but the translation came back wrong, no direct match in any language. Just one phrase, repeated in fleet logs, etched into hull plating, even scratched into the bones of dead Exarthian officers found aboard human wrecks, Empire Black. Whatever it wasn't finished. And until it was, Earth was going to keep cutting pieces out of the galaxy, carving its own empire from the Council's bones. But something changed at Torvin 6. A Council distress call broke through Earth's jamming net, flickering for exactly 12 seconds before it cut. Not the usual static or panic orders, this was something worse. A voice screaming in 12 languages at once, words scrambled, like the whole signal had been rewritten in real time. The only thing that came through clear was the last transmission tag, Exile Class Encryption Origin, Sol. Earth never answered. But Earth ships were already moving. They burned engines past tolerances, boiling reactors to cut minutes off the jump. And when they arrived, Torvin 6 was gone. Not glassed. Not even rubble. Just gone. The whole planet erased from real space. In its place, something hung in the void, a structure half-finished, its edges flickering between solid and unreal, like the system couldn't decide if it was alive or a hallucination. Human sensors pulled fragments from the distortion. Architecture familiar, but wrong. Pieces of Earth tech bolted to something older, something not made by human hands. Signals bled from its core, and every human ship in range heard the same voice whispering inside their comm channels, matching the same cold authority that exiled Earth years ago. Exile complete. And then the structure turned, pointing straight at Sol. The countdown had started. The humans didn't run. They burned straight into the storm. Captain Area Vex stared at the data feed pouring from the structure. Her fingers locked so tight around the command rail, her gloves split at the seams. She wasn't scared. Fear was a luxury she burned out years ago, but something deeper had taken root in her chest. Recognition. Like some piece of her past had crawled out of a grave she forgot she'd dug, and now it wanted to talk. Every chart, every energy pulse, every fragment of human tech fused into that alien frame matched something from the Sol archives. Secret projects sealed under Earth's crust when the Council came for blood. Programs designed to rebuild humanity from bones and fire. Her crew didn't need orders. They were born into exile, raised on scraps and propaganda, and baptized in ambushes where death was the only real currency. Lieutenant Krail worked comms like he was disarming a bomb, fingers dancing over interference loops and decrypt patterns, trying to talk to a ghost that wasn't talking back. He was 17 when the Council burned his colony ship in orbit over Proxima b, the only survivor because his escape pod jammed in the launch tube long enough for the battle to pass. Arya didn't trust anyone who hadn't already crawled out of a grave, and Krail had been dragging his corpse behind him for a decade. Behind him, Navigator Sora locked eyes on the structure's shifting geometry, her pupils blown wide, with augmented overlays pumping real-time sensor feeds into her skull. Her first tour was running blockade runners through Council quarantine zones, flying ships held together with welds and prayer, dodging patrols so close she could smell reactor coolant from their engines. Now she flew the fastest ship Earth ever built, and it wasn't fast enough. The ship itself, Iron Vow, was bleeding. Every reactor spike cooked the heat sinks a little more, and every burst of speed ripped microfractures through the hull plating. They all knew this ship wasn't getting home. That was never the mission. They were here to die loud enough that Earth could hear it. The structure pulsed again, and this time the voice didn't whisper. It screamed, filling every channel, every frequency, flooding the screens with symbols pulled from Earth's own exiled encryption protocols. Project tags, long buried under Council sensors, Cerberus Gate. No crown. Empire Black. The words meant nothing to most of the crew, just classified ghosts. But Arya knew. She had signed off on one of them. The last day she wore a uniform before the Council tribunal sent her to exile with the rest. Empire Black wasn't a fleet. It was a question. How far would Earth go to survive? How much would they cut away before they weren't human anymore? The answer was staring at them through the void. That structure, it was part Earth, part something older. Something from beyond the spiral arms, where ships went dark and never came back. And the way it moved, not with thrusters, but with intention, like it was tracking their hearts instead of their ship. Arya opened the external hail. This is Captain Vex of the Earth Exile Fleet. Identify yourself. The signal came back instantly, her own voice, distorted and dragged through a grinder. Exile complete. Return to origin. Sora swore. Krail's hands froze over his panel, and the ship's power grid surged, weapons coming online without command input. Something inside the structure was speaking directly to the Vow's systems, overriding safeties, rewiring the ship's brain. A pulse cannon charged on its own, swiveling to aim directly at Sol Earth coordinates, locked and burning. Krail's voice broke first. They turned our own ship into a gun. Arya's mind raced, every option collapsing into static. The Council wanted Earth broken, but they didn't build this. This was something Earth built for itself and lost control of. The ghost in the machine was an alien. It was human. And it wanted to go home. The countdown flashed again. 17 seconds until pulse ignition. Arya pulled her sidearm and shot the console directly, sparks showering across the bridge, but the weapon kept charging. Sora spun in her seat. We can't shut it down. We either cut the core or we ride it all the way into Sol. Arya set her jaw, voice flat. Then we ride. They punched engines to full, slamming directly into the structure's outer ring, scraping hull to hull, tearing through protrusions and sensor masts as they locked the Vow into a death grip with the monster they came to kill. Bulkheads screamed, and atmosphere vented across 3 decks, but they held. The structure's voice came again, softer this time. Return to origin. Arya leaned into the mic, her voice a razor. Origin's dead. You want Earth? You go through us. The countdown hit 0. Nothing happened. Then the stars moved. Not the ship. Not the station. The stars themselves shifted positions that hadn't changed in billions of years, flickered, rearranged like someone rewrote the sky. Krail's whisper broke the silence. They just opened something. Outside, space wasn't empty anymore. Something was coming through. The breach alarm screamed through iron Vow, cutting into their ears like jagged metal, but no one moved for the sealed hatches. Krail was still staring into the sensor feed, hands twitching like a man trying to catch smoke. Sora's mouth moved without sound, her breath catching on words her brain couldn't process. Arya's pistol stayed drawn, not at the screens, not at the breach, but at Krail's back. Stand down, she said, voice low, razor-edged. Krail didn't flinch. His fingers punched commands that weren't supposed to exist, pulling encrypted channels from the void like he already knew where to find them. The signal cutting through the static wasn't alien. It was human. A council frequency layered under the noise like a splinter in bone. You're gonna want to hear this, Captain, Krail said, not turning around. But you're not going to like who's calling. Arya stepped closer, sidearm aimed at the base of his skull. Say the name, Krail. He didn't. He just opened the feed. The voice that came through the speakers wasn't Council. It wasn't Earth Command. It was his voice. Krail's own, from hours earlier, transmitting a location beacon before they reached the anomaly. Before they knew this thing even existed. Sora spun out of her chair, hand drifting to the knife on her belt. He sent our position. Krail turned, slow and deliberate, eyes locked on Arya's pistol. I didn't. Something in the Vow did. A sleeper protocol buried in the ship, maybe before we ever launched. It used my credentials. My voice print. Arya's grip never wavered. And you didn't notice your own goddamn throat talking to the void? Not until it answered. Sora's knife came up, trembling, but ready. Council? Syndicate? Who answered? Krail? He didn't need to say it. The structure outside pulsed again, and this time it wasn't a broadcast, it was a command. Every screen on the bridge flared with the same 2 words, Empire Black. Arya felt the burn in her chest like a wound reopening. This ship's not Council. It's not Earth Command. It's a goddamn return package from Empire Black itself. Krail's eyes flicked to the external cam feed, the stars still wrong, space still folding in ways physics wasn't built to explain. Whatever we woke up out there, it's been waiting for us to bring it home. And if we don't steer it back to Sol, it's gonna call someone else who will. Arya holstered her pistol. Not happening. Sora's fingers shook on her knife. You think we can stop it? Arya shook her head. No, but we can make sure it doesn't survive us. Krail's screen flickered again, new data spilling through the noise. One last signal, routed directly into the ship's black box, encrypted so deep even the AI couldn't touch it. It was a message. One word. Harbinger. Arya's knuckles cracked against the console as her fist slammed down. The Council wasn't coming. The Empire wasn't coming. Something older, something that taught humanity how to build death into machines, was already here. And the vow had just lit the beacon to welcome it home. Before anyone could process it, the breach alarm died. In its place, the air grew heavy, like gravity forgot how to work. A shape twisted through the bulkhead, not flesh, not metal, something between both, and wearing a face Arya knew better than her own. It was her. Another Arya, skin stretched too tight, eyes black pits swallowing light, standing in the doorway with her sidearm raised. And then the other Arya spoke. Origin remembers. The trigger pulled, and the lights went out. The blast struck Arya square in the chest, but it wasn't heat or force that dropped her. It was memory, every command given, every loss buried, every compromise made since Earth's exile flooding into her brain like a dam breach. She hit the deck convulsing, teeth clenched hard enough to crack, seeing herself through 1,000 mirrored angles. Each one was her. Each one wasn't. Krail yanked Sora back from the twisted doppel, anger still standing in the doorway. The fake Arya didn't move closer. It just stood there, watching, while Arya writhed on the floor, her mind rewiring itself with every breath. Kill it, Sora hissed, voice shaking. Krail didn't move. His eyes were locked on Arya, watching something shift beneath her skin, like her bones couldn't decide if they belonged to her or something else. Captain? Krail's voice cracked. Arya, can you hear me? Her eyes snapped open, pupils blown wide, like a body just dragged out of vacuum. I see it, she whispered. All of it. The false Arya turned its head, too smooth, too liquid, like flesh in 0G. Origin remembers, it said again, and this time Arya spoke the words with it. Sora's knife came up again, but Krail caught her wrist. Wait. Something's wrong. No shit, Sora snarled, twisting against his grip. That thing's wearing her face. No, Krail cut her off, voice low, fear knotted in his throat. That is her. The bulkhead monitors flared back to life, but the feed wasn't from the Iron Vow. It was from somewhere deeper, something built into the ship's bones long before this crew ever stepped aboard. A timestamp scrolled across the screen. First transmission Sol Exodus event. Arya was watching herself, years younger, standing on a council deck, giving the order that cast Earth out into the dark. And standing beside her was Krail. Not the Krail she knew. A Krail wearing Syndicate colors, whispering into her ear as she signed Earth's death sentence. What the hell is this? Sora's voice cracked. Krail stared at his own face, younger, sharper, colder than he remembered being. I never served the Syndicate, he said. I was mining asteroids when the Council collapsed. The false Arya stepped into the room, skin rippling like water across broken glass. That's what you remember, it said. But it's not what you are. The screen changed again. Genetic profiles, memory implants, identity codes overlapping like corrupted files, all pointing to the same conclusion. Arya, Krail, Sora, every officer left alive on Iron Vow, all built from the same core template. Copies of the original Council crew who triggered Earth's exile, overwritten and deployed under new names, new memories, serving Earth's hidden empire in silence. "No," Arya whispered, her voice breaking like brittle metal. "We fought for Earth because they left us behind." The false Arya smiled with her face, teeth too white, too perfect. "You fought for Earth because we told you to. And now, Origin wants you back." Krail's hand dropped from Sora's wrist, fingers numb. "What the hell is Origin?" The fake Arya stepped aside, and the bulkhead behind her began to dissolve, not open, dissolve into raw data, like the ship itself was made of memory instead of steel. Beyond the wall, the void wasn't empty. A fleet hung there, dead silent, hulls blacker than space, each ship marked with a single sigil, a shattered Earth, encircled by a serpent eating its own tail. The symbol of Empire Black. But behind those ships, something moved, something larger, coiled around the fleet like a predator shepherding prey. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even metal. It was a world. A world built from wreckage and corpses, stitched together into a sphere that pulsed with the same signal still beating in Arya's skull. The signal calling them home. "We never left Earth," Arya said, voice hollow. "Earth left us." The false Arya's smile faded. "No, Earth became us. And now, you're finally ready to remember why." The hull began to bend inward, pulled toward the approaching world like gravity itself had been rewritten. The Iron Vow screamed as its spine twisted, alarms cascading into static, and then the airlock burst open, not to vacuum, but to something darker. Something that had been waiting. And just before the lights died again, Arya heard her own voice whisper from the walls, "Welcome home, Captain."